We're going to look at the basic functions of ForeFlight as we conduct a short VFR cross-country over the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia. If you've never used ForeFlight before, this will serve as a great intro to the basics of the app and how to incorporate it into a relatively normal cross-country. There's no way we could cover all the features, even the basic ones, in this one video, and there are setup tasks and functions you'll want to do using it for the first time that won't be covered here. But this demo will show you features you'll most frequently use in real-life flying. So we'll start out on the ramp at Lynchburg, Virginia. We're going to be flying to the northwest to Greenbrier Valley, just across the West Virginia border. We can see that our position is shown by the pulsing blue dot. We can connect to GPS either through our tablet if that's enabled, or through a peripheral GPS unit like a Stratus. The first thing we can do is load that route onto our map. If we tap the search box in the top right, we can type in the airport pair, KLYH for Lynchburg, and after a space, KLWB for Greenbrier. The route is the first option given. We can tap that to load it up. The airports have been loaded with a magenta line connecting them, showing our direct route. We've also enabled a feature where the extended center lines of the runways are depicted for each airport, which is terrific for situational awareness. If we tap FPL at the top, we can see our flight plan in the bubbles. Let's tap clear to get rid of this for a second, and we can load this flight plan by also tapping inside the box and typing our airport codes. If we clear it off one more time, we can see that we can also load it by tapping the airports themselves on the chart. First, by tapping Lynchburg, a small airport window pops up. We'll tap Add to Route at the top. We can scroll to our destination, tap Greenbrier, and add that as well. An optional thing we can do is load up the performance profile for our aircraft. We won't cover how to create a profile, instead we'll use one already created. First tap the N number on the left, which is the defaulted aircraft profile. This brings up the list of all our aircraft. We're flying the Cirrus today, so we'll tap that one. This will give us some estimated data, such as ETE. As you can see, it's estimating 27 minutes for our flight, which takes our cruise speed, as well as the winds aloft at the altitude we're setting for the flight. It also shows our estimated fuel burn. We can select an appropriate altitude by tapping Profile on the right. This pulls up a terrain profile for our route of flight. As you can see, the tops of the Blue Ridge Mountains are displayed along our route. We also have the delta airspaces of the two airports shown. The shaded area on the right is showing where our first terrain strike is predicted. So we'd need to adjust our planned descent to either start later or be shallower, but we'll skip that here. We can select an altitude by either dragging the altitude box on the left or just tapping it. We'll select VFR and westerly to get the even thousands plus 500. Notice the headwinds are predicted at each altitude. We'll take 6,500 for terrain clearance. On some subscription plans, you can overlay air mets for turbulence and icing on this profile view as well. Let's tap Edit to go back to that tab on the flight plan. We should always pack for our trip by tapping the suitcase icon. This will download current info onto our tablet that we won't be able to get when airborne and not able to connect to Wi-Fi or cellular data. We can use ForeFlight to get a full weather briefing just like if we called flight service. We could tap the send icon, tap flights, which will create a flight using the information we've put in so far, and tap briefing at the top. This will download everything we need for a brief. We can pull up individual segments like departure weather or NOTAMs. You can get all this information from other sources as well. If you tap the airport once again, the small window shows current METAR weather. You could bring up the TAF as well. You can even get a forecast discussion like you get on aviationweather.gov. There's a tab for NOTAMs so we can be familiar with those as well. Let's zoom out a bit and look at some other graphical features. If we tap the layers icon at the top left, we can see which layers we've selected to overlay on the chart. Let's add air mets and segments to this. We see an area overlaid on our route, and if we tap anywhere inside of it, get info on it. It's an air met for high-level turbulence. By the way, we've also selected to overlay radar weather, traffic from ADS-B if connected, TFRs, flight category, which shows the green at all these airports indicating VFR conditions, and PIREPs, which brings up those little boxes where turbulence has been reported higher up. Let's get ready for departure. We can bring up frequencies from the Airport Info tab and load ground and tower as well as ATIS. Once we get our taxi instructions, we can bring up the taxiway diagram by tapping that box. Our aircraft position is shown on the diagram. We're using Jeppesen, but FAA plates will come up as the default. We can zoom in to get a look at the taxiways. After getting our taxi instructions, we can use this screen as well as our GPS position to guide us along the taxiways to our departure runway. We go back to the map screen by tapping that option at the bottom and can pull up the airport window one more time. If we scroll down, we can see an appropriate frequency for approach for flight following after we've departed. For departure, let's tap Navlog up top. This will give us some estimates based on our actual ground speed and track once airborne. With our takeoff clearance, we taxi out. ForeFlight tells us we're approaching runway 4 and then tells us we've entered runway 4 with the distance remaining. We can pull up some more telemetry by tapping the indicator icon at the top and see distance, ETE, ground speed, GPS-derived altitude, ground track, and GPS accuracy fields depicted on the bottom. These fields can be switched out for other readings, just like you could on a panel-installed GPS unit. Once we establish in cruise, we can check some destination information. We'll tap the airport to bring up the small window. Tapping the weather tab gives us the METAR. The winds are out of the northwest there too. If we tap the taxiway box, we'll see the runway alignment, which we also saw with our extended centerlines option selected. This allows us to select the appropriate runway for the wind. ForeFlight can do this for us too if we tap the runway tab. It shows us runway 4 is best for the wind, with a 3-knot headwind component and 5-knot crosswind component. Obviously, these things will only work if your tablet can access weather through either ADS-B in or Wi-Fi or cellular data. Tapping the Info tab gives us destination radio frequencies. If we scroll down, we see the traffic pattern altitudes, and we can also pull up the airport's chart supplement page to see all other information we might need. Going back to the taxi diagram, we can tap the FBO box and on-field services show up, so we can plan where we're going after touching down. If we want to think about alternates, we can tap on another airport not on our route, like Roanoke here, to see weather and any other information. When we're 20 miles out, a box pops up telling us the ATIS frequency for our destination. We'll tap the airport to pull up info and load some frequencies in. Around 15 miles out, we're told to make a left turn to set up for a straight in for runway 4. This is where having those extended center lines can really come in handy. We enter final and bring it down towards the runway. After we've touched down and slowed enough, the map zooms in and the taxiway diagram is overlaid, guiding us onto the taxiways. We already know where we're going on the field thanks to the brief we did with the help of ForeFlight. Obviously, we've just scratched the surface here of what ForeFlight can do. The setup and defaults on your app will also probably look a bit different than ours, but the features we've demonstrated here are some of the major ones you'll use on almost all your flying.